Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton, Jeff Simmons here. The day after the Seahawks made it back to the Super Bowl, where they'll play the New England Patriots. Get your super chats in, like the video, make sure you subscribe because we're going to be doing a lot of streams between now and the Super Bowl, so you won't miss any of them. Jeff, how are you feeling the day after that? So the Seahawks are back in the Super Bowl. They've beaten the Rams and the one game away from being champions again.
It's still pretty surreal. It was really hard to get any sleep last night. You could probably see some bags under my eyes. I look a little disheveled today. Yeah, that was a crazy game. And I'm still wrapping my head around. If you would have told me the game script was that Matt Stafford was going to be the MVP of the league, he was going to play as good as the game as he can play, and at that point, the Seahawks defense, both the D-line and the coverage, were going to have horrible games. I would have said there's no way the Seahawks are going to win that game. And the fact that they won, and they could have won by double digits if it wasn't for one of the worst, biggest bonehead penalties I've ever seen, that Sam Darnold, Clint Kubiak, and the offense carried this team in spite of all that, I'm still pretty shocked they were able to win with that game script. And it just says so much about this team. Says so much about Darnold, and they got it done. Kupp, JSN, Ken Walker. The offense carried this team yesterday, and the defense got it done.
The incredible thing for me, Jeff, this season, and this has happened in multiple games now, is that whenever there's been a unit or a group that need to raise the rest of the team, they've managed to do it. And in many occasions, you've needed to rely on a great defensive performance to keep you in the game. Like if you think about the Panthers game as a good example, the offense wasn't playing very well. The defense just completely shuts down the Panthers. And therefore, it gives you enough time to right the ship on offense, put the points up that you needed to get the job done. You can look at perhaps the game in Atlanta that I believe you were at. Like that was a really bad first half from the Seahawks. And yet they start the second half with a long kick return touchdown from Rashid Shaheed. And special teams gives everyone a spark. They end up running away with that game. It's an absolute, something like 37-9 in the end or something like that. And in this game, like if you'd have asked 100 people what needed to happen for the Seahawks to win, they probably would have said avoid turnovers, which they did do. That was one of the things that came true. But you would have thought a great defensive performance would have been the order of the day. And the weird thing is, Jeff, is it was a complete million miles away from a great defensive performance. But it was an unbelievable performance from Sam Darnold. Just incredible. Like to step up to the plate there. And like you said, Matt Stafford played at an unreal level yesterday. And it required Sam Darnold matching it stride for stride, and playing better, I have to say, because Stafford was great. But look what he was on third down. And I can remember speaking to somebody in the game who is very well respected. And I asked them, I've mentioned this on many streams, what do they look for when they're scouting quarterbacks? They watch every third down that they attempt before even deciding whether they're going to carry on scouting that player. And what you saw yesterday was the reason why that happens. Because on third down, Darnold was unbelievable. And Stafford wasn't. And that was a big part of that game yesterday.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat this morning that I don't think another quarterback has thrown 3 touchdown passes under pressure before in the NFC Championship. And Darnold, the pass protection held up pretty well, but the whole story on Darnold was whenever he gets pressure, he folds. Whenever people get around him, he throws There was maybe one bad throw where it was like between 2 guys early in the game, but not only wasn't turnover-worthy throws or putting the team in danger, he made the throw to Bobo. If you watch the throw he makes, they saw that cool replay. Unbelievable. And that was the biggest problem with the Seahawks defense yesterday. It felt like Matt Stafford was almost never in third down. And every time the Seahawks scored, they just needed one stop. And there's a chunk play right away. Colby Parkinson got one. Puka got one. Devontae. The Seahawks were just rushing forward for most of the game. They weren't disrupting Stafford very often. And the coverage was not good. Devin Witherspoon fell 3 or 4 times. Woolen got burned on that play after the penalty. Josh Jobe had some tough moments against Devontae Adams. He missed the ball against Parkinson. And so when the rush and the coverage wasn't working, you expect it to be a pretty tough day. And Darnold on the other side, they were pressuring him a little bit. It wasn't the Jared Verse, Kobe Turner take over the game kind of thing, but a lot of those touchdowns, he had to make throws where he couldn't step into it fully. And like we saw what happens with other quarterbacks when they do that. That was a level under pressure that I just haven't seen. Darnold had some games this year where he looked like an MVP level player. The Washington game, earlier this year in that Arizona game, he was really good. But on this stage, to do that with Stafford going head to head, and if they don't score on one of those drives, they might lose the game because of that stupid rule and penalty. And what he did in that moment just has to make him like a legendary Seahawk.
Without a doubt. And the touchdowns you've raised it, the fact that it was something I was mentioning in the comment section on the blog as the game was going on, is like every touchdown pass, he was getting hammered as the ball was being released. And to be able to execute under that kind of pressure is fantastic. So Sam Darnold, a brilliant performance. Jackson Smith and Jigba. As I mentioned, Jeff, I was surprised that the defense, it felt very similar. They were losing in different ways than week 16, but we're still getting whipped by, no pressure on Stafford. The Seahawks had 13 pressures in the game. I struggle to remember those 13 pressures. They did say that DeMarcus Lawrence had 3 and that Byron Murphy had 3. But the Rams had 22 pressures in the game, including 8 from Jared Verse. And it did feel as if someone in Seattle was going to have to make that kind of an impact. They were going to have to get 8 pressures. They were going to have to put Matthew Stafford under that kind of pressure. And it never really happened, Jeff. And I kind of came out of the game thinking, whatever happens in 2 weeks, yes, you can sort of pick different positions that Seattle's going to need to add to. But I still think they need someone who can create quick pressure. They need somebody who can get after the quarterback in key moments in a game like this and cause problems. And they don't really have that. And players like Boya Mafe, it's almost like you forget that they're still on the roster. Like that should be his role. Like you're a high second round pick who is a speed rusher. Like make a play, but he just doesn't do it. So they're going to have to target that in the offseason. I think whether they win the Super Bowl or not is getting that sort of quick pressure. But I was surprised they couldn't get an angle on it, Jeff. But I'm also a little bit surprised that I was kind of thinking in the game, they're going to need a big play. Someone's going to have to do something like an interception, a fumble. They're going to need some luck. And in the end, it was just the 4th down that they had to stop in the red zone, it was strange that was enough really to get it done. And then the reason it was to get it done is that 5-minute drive at the end. As I remember sitting there thinking, well, 5 minutes is not that long, but they have got the 3 timeouts. It's like, is there any chance of a drive here to win the game? Like, could it happen? Like, and you don't expect it to, because in that instance, Jeff, typically a team gets very conservative. They run it 3 times and pump the ball away, and they just play for field position. But in this instance, to have that drive, they showed some real balls as well to throw when they did and to throw the kind of plays that they did. And they ended the game. They ended the game with a drive on offense. And there's no more, apart from maybe just running it down a team's throat and just running out the clock that way, there's no more satisfying way to win a game than that for me. Just like you take it away from them to the point that they needed a minor miracle, 90 yards in 20 seconds or something. That was never going to happen in a million years.
Yeah, like once they got the stop on the 4th down, my immediate thought was, oh no, that means they have to start the ball from the 6-yard line. They're just going to set it up for them to kick and score the winning drive. And weirdly enough, the Seahawks have had a lot of trouble playing deep in their own end this year. There was like moment in Houston where they've had bad snaps and they've done stuff in that Arizona game. And they've just had some very funky plays. And apparently it was in that same end zone where like Will Anderson scored the touchdown in the Houston game, or Darnold gets a little crazy. And that Ken Walker was able to just get out of there with that play early in the drive where he like cut all the way back across the field. And then, like you said, a lot of coaches would just try to be only looking at the clock, trying to run it out, try to run 3 times, trust your defense. But the fact that they were willing to be aggressive, and I thought that was a big moment for Darnold, but especially a big moment for Clint Kubiak, where there's been criticism of how we've managed some of those late game situations when they've been winning. I thought that was brilliant. And they almost ended it with a run, and they were 4 yards away from kneeling it out. And that would have been sweet as well. But they essentially put them in a minute where they had 20 seconds to get down the field with no timeouts. And I thought McVay's timeout usage was peculiar to begin with. But yeah, I thought that said a ton. And like you said, the weird thing about that Seahawks game, if they got one stop and Woolen did get that stop. They could have ran away with this game, even in spite of all that. But really, like other than the fourth down stop, right before the end of the first half, when the Rams scored to take the lead, and Nick Eamon-Wari had a huge series where he broke up 2 passes in a row, and that allowed Seattle to go down the field and score and take the lead back. That was a massive moment in the game. And Eamon-Wari, for all people think there's flaws and whatever, he made 2 plays in coverage against that team the other guys weren't making. Witherspoon kept falling for whatever reason, and Josh Jobe had moments, and then like they did the classic move of go after the guy after he takes a stupid penalty, and Woolen embarrassed himself. The fact that they were able to win with just those minor moments, I think just comes down to how well Darnold played, and they scored 31 points in that game. Just massive.
Yeah, for once, Jeff, PFF got it right. They gave Eamon-Wari a good grade. He was the highest graded player on the defense. He got an 89.5. I
didn't even look. I'm like, the last thing I care about in the playoffs, I don't think much of PFF grades. I do not care about PFF grades. Your goal is to win the game, any means necessary. I don't care how the players play.
The reason I brought it up, Jeff, is I want to have a guess. Have a guess what Sam Darnold's grade was for this game.
I'm trying to think of the most infuriating, like 71.
67.4.
What? How is that game not in the 90s?
67.4.
All right, I give up.
Marginally better than George Alani, apparently. That's the... yeah. It's just, I mean, if there was ever anything that you needed to see, I mean, like, you sit there and you come out afterwards and you think, my God, I think I've just watched one. But
he had the way they grade, like he had the big time throw. He had that throw to JSN at the end of the first half that puts him in position to win. He had
no turnover worthy plays.
No turnover worthy plays. He's smart with his legs. He dropped the one snap, but
I can only imagine that it's stuff like that. Oh, he dropped a snap. He was sacked. Like he had the negative run at the end of the game or something. Like which wasn't his fault. Like I can only imagine the stupid stuff like that. But when you come off afterwards and you think, I think I've just watched possibly the best, at least most complete quarterback performance, maybe in Seahawks history. Like this, Matt Hasselbeck and Russ obviously had some amazing games. But this, just with the pressure element to it, with the people doubting him, Jeff, and with everything around that, to come out and play that kind of complete performance, I think that was unbelievable. And then to sort of see that PFF thought it was a fairly mundane, run-of-the-mill, almost a banal performance from Sam Darnold, I found quite amusing. Can we look at bigger picture things for a moment here, Jeff? Because,
sure.
You and I, over the years, have kind of come together on a Monday or whatever it was and complained about the way that the team was doing in some format. Like last year, we spent nearly every week talking about the offensive line. And if you'd have said to me this time last year, you will be doing a stream talking about the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, I'd ask you what drugs you were taking. Like, there's absolutely no way I would have expected that at all. And yet here we are. How has it come to this, Jeff? How are we sat here today on the 26th of January with 13 days ahead of us of just enjoying, because you're very much like me. You will watch probably everything and listen to everything for the next 2 weeks because I can't get enough of it. Like I will listen to people I don't even like listening to if they're talking about this Super Bowl. I will indulge in everything. And it just fills me with great joy to sort of think that that's what the next 2 weeks are going to be like ahead of a chance to win a Super Bowl again for the Seahawks. And the fact that it's against the Patriots, I want to talk a bit about that too. But what an unbelievable turnaround this has been.
Yeah, like last year, we were spending a lot of time. Couple things. Is the roster good enough? Is there enough players to go from good to great? It kind of felt, I know people who saw the first practice of the team this year, and they're like, it just looks like a team stuck in mediocrity. And I know people that came to that conclusion. And look, we've said for a long time, they don't have enough blue chip. Where's the game wrecker on defense? They drafted too many just guys. And last year, they didn't have an offensive coordinator that knew what they were doing. The offensive line was in hell. And really, there was no reason to think they could solve all of those things in 1 year. And again, you have to think of some of the things that happen in their favor. Gino Smith refuses to negotiate with them. If Gino Smith signs that contract, I don't think this team's in the Super Bowl. I really don't. Everyone's going to say, well, how would he have done with Kubiak and a better O-line? I think we all saw Gino Smith play this year. I don't think this team makes the Super Bowl, Gino Smith, especially when the number one thing they talk about is connectedness and leadership. And if you read Brady Henderson's column. So it starts with Gino refusing to negotiate, which gives Seattle the idea, because when Seattle was interviewing Kubiak and Udinski last year, both guys who ties to Darnold, this wasn't in their plans. They were planning to sign Gino Smith. They thought they'd have him for 2 years, and that was it.
Do you think they deliberately made an offer to Gino Smith, though, that they knew he wouldn't accept, and it would enable them to move forward?
I think that was part of the plan, but I do think they were, like you heard Mike after the year last year, he was outright, Gino's our quarterback. I think my understanding is the front office had hesitation committing to him beyond 1 year. And they viewed him similar to how me and you viewed him versus the corner of the internet that thinks they know everything, who thought he was a top 10 quarterback. Gino snubs them. They have the infrastructure for Darnold. DK Metcalf was in this team's plans. He demands a trade. And you know what happens? That draft pick they got from Pittsburgh became Nick Uwin-Mori. Best player in their defense last night, potential rookie of the year, building block for their future. And that roster spot, how do we fill the second roster spot? That goes to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp scored the game-winning touchdown. Now, Cooper Kupp hasn't had the best season in terms of like counting stats, or doesn't flash on the field as much. And there were games he didn't affect very much, but I think undoubtedly he's contributed to the culture of the locker room, the leadership, the impact on JSN. JSN's talked about what being around Kupp has done for him. And then they have the draft where they get Gray Zabel, who I think has changed a lot of their issues in one. Has helped left guard's been a disaster zone. And the coaching staff that Kubiak brought in, and then all the guys that have emerged, JSN going, and I think DK getting out of there and Kupp coming in is a big reason JSN became the guy he's become this year. And he's now up there in the top 3 receiver. We were talking about who's going to be a good to great. JSN is undoubtedly a great player. To do what he did on that stage against the Niners, against the Rams, this guy is capable of anything. And he's got another tough assignment coming up in the Super Bowl, but JSN is probably the best player on the team. And he had some moments last year. Second half, he looked like he'd turn a corner, but I didn't think I was JSN's biggest fan coming out of that draft. I didn't think he'd be this. I didn't think he'd be Justin Jefferson level in the NFL, all pro. He's been unbelievable. And then the infrastructure of the coaching. And then you add DeMarcus Lawrence, who, again, didn't have the best game last night, but he's had an unbelievable season. And so you hit on so many different things there. They have an offensive line that's become competent. The run game in the second half, like the fourth quarter of the year, has taken off. Ken Walker looked fantastic last night. I know his counting stats weren't great, but he made a big deal for them. Again, JSN emerging, Gray Zabel becoming a building block. They have 2 rookies that got all pro votes this year. I can't remember the last time anyone on their team got all pro votes. And the combination of all of those moves, Leonard Williams and Ernest Jones, and moves that seemed desperate and seemed so like the Pete Carroll era where you're just trying to fill holes. And it really did feel like that at the time, where they're just trying to cover up. But it's all come together, and Mike McDonald and the staff he's put together is unbelievable. So they've hit on so many things we've talked about. Offensive line and defensive line, win in the trenches. A quarterback that could command the room and play his best game in the biggest moment. A defense that is innovative. And what we said, how many years we talk about coaching and losing with our coaching staff. The best part of our coaching staff got killed yesterday. And Kubiak had the best game of his Seahawks tenure in the biggest moment. We've gone from Grubb to Schottenheimer and Waldron and Bevel. Like, was there a game you could say that about any of those guys? I don't think so. And so all of this come together, and the fact that this team was still able to win with such a weak performance from a lot of their best defensive players last night, I think just says so much of how this has happened.
I think it's incredible. And there are there are people like DK Metcalf that I'd love to know what they're thinking today, Jeff. I'd love to know, because you've seen quite a few people, and like even like Russell Wilson's tweeting away and congratulating Sam Darnold, and there's one or two ex-Seahawks who have done all of that, and I suppose when you look at you're kind of looking over at DK Metcalf, the guy who wanted out, who requested a trade, felt that the grass was greener in Pittsburgh. Well, there you go, my man. You've got the prospect of Mike McCarthy coaching your team next year, and really the Steelers fans are fuming. The owner of the Steelers released a statement, I think yesterday, accepting and was actually quoted in this piece saying, "I understand everybody hates the hire." Like that's the kind of franchise that you are at. Like this once fabled Pittsburgh Steelers franchise looks like it's in something of a shambles at the moment. Like it'd be like it would have been like the Seahawks firing Pete Carroll, Jeff, and appointing Mike McCarthy as well. Like imagine if they'd have done that. And that's not to say that Mike McCarthy's a bad coach, or it would have been awful and it would have been a 4-win team, but they'd have just carried on being what they were under Carroll, which is good, not great. And we get to sit here and look at a great team. And part of the reason that they're great, DK, is because you're not here anymore. So how do you feel about that? And likewise with Gino. I mean, it is absolutely hilarious that he has gone to the Raiders and did that stupid interview at ESPN. And you're picking first overall. You're going to get cut, and they're going to replace you with Fernando Mendoza for Sunshine. And how do you feel about that? I mean, that was the stupidest article I've ever read after one win from Gino. I'd love to know what these people think. Maybe they'll share their opinions with us over the course of the next 2 weeks. But it has been an unbelievable turnaround from the Seahawks. They have clearly just sort of driven things forward here, Jeff, to the point of they're not just a good team, but really likable as well. Do you get that sense? Like when you're watching this team, you really want them to do well. I don't know if I'd have, of course, if it was my team that was the Chiefs and they were driving on, I don't know if I'd have been as quite as in touch or felt part of this team if I was watching, Taylor Swift's future husband and seeing her in the booth all of the time and having to deal with that, and there's just something about this team which is extremely easy to root for, and I think that was summed up in the way that they all spoke. Mike McDonald's fantastic post game interview. Jaron Reed crying. I'm a huge Jaron Reed fan, and to see him all emotional. Leonard Williams, some great shots of him after the game. It was brilliant, Jeff. It was truly excellent to experience this team enjoying themselves, and I really hope now they can finish it off and they'll go down in history as a team that we can all be really proud of.
Yeah, and my co-host Brian, I thought summed it up kind of what you're talking about really well today. I thought he put it in. And he said, like, the closest thing to kind of what's happened here is what happened with the Legion of Boom, where they all sort of emerged at once, and all of a sudden that team just went from being mediocre to great really fast. But it was a different cast, and what he said was really good. That team was about like having a chip on your shoulder. It was all cast-offs and guys who were rejected in the draft, and they had so much anger and they could find so much hate. This team's more about love and like the connectedness of the team and the joy of playing together. And I think that sums up what you said. Like, a lot of people did not like Richard Sherman. A lot of people didn't like Russell Wilson. A lot of people didn't like Marshawn Lynch. Seahawks fans did, but they were, I'm sure, enemies to a lot of people. And they were so fueled by hatred of Jim Harbaugh. And this team just has something special about them. I think that's the core of what Mike McDonald's tried to build and the kind of players they've been to the building. You've talked a lot about kind of their character and how they've changed their draft, and you see Leonard Williams come back here, and he's the leader of the team. And Jaron Reed has kind of transformed, kind of a rough exit from Seattle after what happened, coming back in here and kind of setting the culture. JSN, like pure joy, like low maintenance guy who just does his job. There's so many likable characters on the team, and you do get a little of that fire with Witherspoon and with Eamon Worry and Cooper Kupp. Just like you can't not feel great for Ernest Jones last night, seeing how happy that must made him. And you get a little fire from some of these guys. And I think Darnold, just like you saw what happened last year in Minnesota, where they're dumping water on his head and celebrating. There's something about that dude that just connects with these guys. And so AJ Barner is just like, what a lovable personality. He kind of reminds me of what Kelsey was like before he became a celebrity. early in his career. He was just this like fun-loving, big, like kind of meatheady white guy. Like if you don't love AJ Barner, I don't know. Gray Zabel is like the most likable guy. Some of the other guys are pretty quiet. Like Cross doesn't say much, and Lucas doesn't say much. But there's just so many pieces of this team that are likable and fun, and you want them to do well. And collectively as a group, it's just a really fun team. And so, yeah, like you said, like I was so devastated last night because I thought that Woolen play was going to cost them the game. And I thought I'd just be sitting here all summer going over that play in my head. And I was like, I can't believe this team is not going to win because of that stupid penalty. And then you look at the other side, and did you see how the Rams acted after the game? Have you seen Sean McVay's clips after the game?
I mean, I watched his press conference. I watched the press conference, but I saw people talking about it, and I thought I must have missed what has riled everybody up because I watched it, but I was only half listening to it. So go ahead, explain.
He was basically saying on the fourth down, Seattle got really lucky with how they defended that play, and two people accidentally ended up covering the Kyron Williams, who I think the play was designed for, and that became their only option. He just was kind of acting like a child that lost his toy. Like there was not like, oh, congrats to the Seahawks. They played really well. Darnold. It was all like, well, we didn't get this break and I feel sick. And it was a bad look for him. I thought he acted like a baby. And Kyle Shanahan's had some ugly press conferences after losses. I don't know. I thought Stafford was pretty courageous and he went right up to Cup. And the fact that you're not like, man, that team is like, you guys needed a taunting penalty to even have a chance to win the game. Like a shit taunting penalty. Like show some class, show some respect.
The thing about that play is that he obviously didn't think it was much of a play because he was running down the sideline trying to call the timeout, and then at the last minute decided not to call the timeout. And what I don't understand, Jeff, is what he should have just done is have Puka Nacua just blocking downfield like he has been on numerous plays all season, or doing what they did on one of their other touchdowns, just have the tight end wipe two guys out and the coverage leaves the running back wide open. Like you were getting away with that all season, Sean. Why didn't you just do that again? Like maybe you overthought it. Maybe it wasn't so much that the Seahawks got lucky, is that you called the wrong play.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, and look, there's a lot of things. He was very critical of himself last week, which I did respect. And I thought he called a particularly bad and conservative game against the Bears that should have lost them the game. And like, frankly, like you're lucky to even be here. You should have lost to the Bears. You should have barely beat Carolina. Like you shouldn't be taking these games for granted. Like it's amazing that they still couldn't win with that Matthew Stafford performance. You guys lost the game. Like show some class, show some leadership. Like, I doubt Mike McDonald would be whining about one play if they had lost the game yesterday. I doubt he'd be talking about the taunting penalty and things like that. I thought I've lost respect for McVay. I think he's a child.
Yeah. The one thing that sorry, I'm just trying to reply to some absolute knob who's just for some reason. The thing is, Jeff, is throughout the whole pre-draft process, there's like a couple of people here who in this sort of Seahawks online sphere who for whatever reason they want to pick up like a couple of comments to like almost like do us down. So even on the day that the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl, we've got some absolute loser in the comment section saying you didn't want to draft Nick Emenwari. And here's the point that I made with Nick. I shouldn't have to explain this again, but I'm going to explain it instead of typing it out. The reason that I talked about Emenwari the way that I did is because there was a report talking about serious character concerns, that he was a bit of a pain in the arse to deal with. And then I verified that with somebody I know who is in the sport who said the exact same thing, and they'd been in meetings with him and they'd studied a lot of that stuff. So when I say there was a character issue there, that's true. Why do people think he lasted to round 2? He didn't last to round 2 because he was a great footballer and everyone just fancied letting the Seahawks have him. He lasted to round 2 for a reason. Now, kudos to the Seahawks because they have been drafting full-on character for years. Like, they haven't gone near anybody who has that kind of a rap sheet, or not even a rap sheet, I shouldn't say rap sheet, or just got like a red flag about character over them. But they clearly decided that this guy was worth taking a chance on and were bold enough to move up and draft him. It's actually a celebration of the decision they made to go up and get this guy when other teams in the league didn't want to go near him because of the issues that I was talking about. So if people want to characterize this as Rob didn't want Nick Emenwari, he was amongst my top 15 players in the draft on my final horizontal board. Okay. So please don't give me this BS about Rob didn't want Emenwari or Rob didn't. I'm sorry. And people always say you shouldn't talk about it, you shouldn't give them any oxygen. If you just let them get away with it all the time, it spreads. And I'm not having this. Like, there are plenty of things you can go back over the years and you can say, you liked Kevin White, Rob, and he did go in the top 10, but he barely played it down in the NFL. By all means, I really like that guy. You can go and pinpoint him. If you're going to call out like a couple of things that I've said and then try and bring it out of context, please go back over the last 18 years and find all the shit that I've got right as well, because that, I'm not having that, because the same people do the same things. Anyway, rant over.
No. And people always say I agree with you too much, but we'll say this. There's a clip from the Ravens draft room. Teams are now doing inside the draft room clips, and they literally have Eric DaCosta debating their pick right when they're about to go on the clock. They're trying to trade it down, and they were literally talking about Malachi Starks, who was a guy you were very high on, his character, versus another guy.
And he was described as, and Malachi Starks was described as like Mr. Football, like first in, last out. Just want to
and literally, they asked, he goes, should we take Starks or this other guy? The other guy's Emenwari. And they said the character is not even close between the two. We got to go with Starks. And look, DaCosta is probably the best drafting GM in the league. So it's not like Rob pulled this out of thin air. If the Baltimore Ravens, who have taken character concern problems, and look, I bet you they're wondering, like, maybe we screwed that one up. And look, I think the Seahawks, like you said, have built an infrastructure where you can now, like, it's well known Jalen Carter was not on their board because they didn't. Well, I think they would have taken him later, but at pick 5 or whatever, his character concerned him to the point where they didn't want to draft him. So this is a real thing that happens. Nick Emenwari might be like a top 5 pick in this next draft, but there was questions about his character. I think that a guy who is that big and can run that fast going in the second round with an All-American tape, he wasn't like Obi Melifonwu. Like, the Ravens literally were caught having that discussion on the clock.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, people will often mention something like this, but not mention that for 3 months I was saying they're not going to draft Jalen Carter. It was going on like VSiN every week because they couldn't believe that there was this random guy from England saying the Seahawks are going to draft Jalen Carter, and they didn't draft him. So let's just be fair. Anyway, I want to move on. I need to stop talking about the draft, because the draft, thankfully, Jeff, I've got a lot of notes that I could put into, and I don't have to go anywhere near the draft for a couple of weeks now because we've got a Super Bowl to look forward to instead of the draft, which is great. It's the Senior Bowl this week, and I kind of completely forgot about this is the kind of like a big week in the draft with the Senior Bowl. I barely spent a second thought on that. I need to dig into that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I don't know if you picked up on this, Jeff. It was something that I really found extremely noticeable during the broadcast, was how much Tom Brady was singing the praises of Clint Kubiak. Like, I was watching the game thinking, the Seahawks might win a game here, but lose an offensive coordinator. But you sent me a tweet from Adam Schefter, who, is well, it's not from Adam Schefter, it's from Pat McAfee, but it's Schefter on the McAfee show. And there's 2 things he said. Like, they cut it really strange. Like, they cut 2 videos that were like 12 seconds long. It's like, why not just put the whole conversation on?
Yeah.
But like 2 12-second clips. The first thing he said is that every hire will be made by Wednesday, in his opinion. So he thinks all the vacancies will be filled by Wednesday, which automatically means Clint Kubiak will not be leaving the Seahawks, because he can't accept a job this week. He would have to accept it after the Super Bowl. So unless he just means that a team has decided they're going to hire him and they're going to wait 2 weeks, which he didn't even hint at that. That means Clint Kubiak isn't going anywhere, which for me, I think this is not recency bias. I think that's amazing news. Based not just on yesterday, but on consistency and having the same staff and same opportunity to come back next year and improve. But then he also said that Joe Brady's in Vegas today. It could be him, Brian Daboll, or Davis Webb as the head coach of the Raiders. Not even a mention of Clint Kubiak, which stuns me, Jeff, because Brady just felt like he was probably texting Mark Davis in between commercial breaks yesterday to say, this is our guy, this is our guy, this is our guy, given how much he was promoting him. And it just seems as if they're going to go in a different direction now, which is amazing news for the Seahawks, because I really did not want to win the Super Bowl, hopefully, knock on wood, touch wood, win the Super Bowl, and then have to launch headfirst into an offensive coordinator search, Jeff, because we saw what happened when the Eagles had to do that last season. They had promoted from within, and it was a disaster. I didn't want to have to go through that. And now it looks as if there is a good chance that Clint Kubiak will stay with the Seahawks, whatever happens.
So I was not looking forward to talking to you today about that, because when I watched the broadcast and I kept hearing Brady talking about Kubiak, I was like, oh, God, Rob's going to be all over me. Because yesterday you wrote me on the side that there's a lot of buzz about those two. And I was pushing back, saying that if they win, it might delay the process to the point where they feel rushed to hire someone else. And then listening to Brady, I'm like, oh, shit, I think I'm wrong. And Jeremy Fowler wrote it yesterday, and Bray Henderson liked it. And Fowler's pretty connected with this stuff, that Clint Kubiak is a – but my thinking was, if they win, they're going to have to wait 2 weeks to hire a coach. And a lot of owners, especially the ones on impatient teams, do not have the discipline to wait until after the Super Bowl. And you remember how hard it was for us as Seahawks fans, even when that Seahawks search was going on. We had just gotten to now. And we were all in, me and you went through it that year with Dan Quinn and all that stuff. And if McDonald and Ben Johnson won those games, they would have had to wait another 2 weeks. And we were already on edge the day Ben Johnson dropped out. So it's very hard to wait. And that was the thing. I thought Schneider was amazing at the fact that he was willing to wait just to speak to McDonald, because he didn't even get the first request in on time. And the Bills are in that same spot because they fired McDermott late because of where they went in the playoffs. They don't have the opportunity to talk to Kubiak, and they're apparently going to hire an offensive coach. I think that the Bills' job would have been phenomenal for him. And so I don't think that's going to happen anymore, because I don't think they're going to be willing to wait 2 weeks. And it doesn't seem like Schefter does either. And the Raiders, I imagine Brady's like, we got to do it. But there's other people in the organization that I think they want to get started on, get their roster ready. The Senior Bowl's this week. I know John Spytek will be down there, but the Combine's in 3-4 weeks. The free agency, if you're the Raiders, you got to get ready. You got to know who your coach is, because you got to start building free agent boards, and the Raiders have a lot of work to do. So this is where organizations get, and that's why the hiring process is pretty stupid. But organizations get impatient. And my thought was, if they lose the game, not only are they going to lose, I think they're going to lose Clint Kubiak too. I think the one chance the Seahawks had to keep him was to win. And I know Tony Pauline put out a report yesterday that there's buzz at the Bowl that they're trying to keep him and they're going to do what they can to keep him. But for me, I feel great seeing that Schefter report, because that matched my vibe for you yesterday. I think if they win, it's going to be really hard for the one team that he's left in the mix with is the Raiders. The Bills haven't interviewed yet. The Browns he's not going to go to. And the other one's the Cardinals, which he did a virtual interview with, but it seems like Matt LaFleur is their guy at this point. Things could change. He's available now. The Cardinals have been in a joke of this coaching search, by the way. But I think there's one team left. If the Raiders hire someone else, and Davis Webb became available yesterday with Denver losing, and Brian Daboll is connected with with Tom Brady, that they coached together. Well, he coached him for a couple of years in New England. I don't think they're going to have the discipline to wait. And I think Kubiak's going to ultimately stay. And seeing that report from Schefter put a huge smile on my face. And look, Schefter gets these things wrong. Sometimes they don't want to put things out in public. Maybe they want to keep that low. But he said everyone's going to be hired up by Wednesday. So keep your eye out. If the Raiders hire someone, this is massive news for the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's huge news. And Tony's report on a full court press made sense. Like you have to sort of financially make it. Like, why not? Like that's an area where if you can bump Clint Kubiak's salary up and make it so that not necessarily feeling like you have to take the Raiders job just because it's available now. And that's a difficult team to take over, because you're going to go over there and like everyone's like, yeah, they've got the number one overall pick. There's no guarantee that Fernando Mendoza is going to be able to do what he's been doing at Indiana in the NFL. Like the last time I checked, the RPO and back shoulder throw constant is not a feature in the NFL week to week. And on top of that, you're probably going to lose Max Crosby one way or another. And then maybe you'll get a couple of picks in a crap draft. Well, congratulations. Like it's a very difficult team. And also they haven't been patient. Like if you have a bad first year, as the last two coaches have found out, and Josh McDaniels got 5 minutes there, you will be sacked. You'll be fired. So if you can make it financially attractive to stay in Seattle, then go for it and then sort of build yourself for next year. Obviously, there's no guarantee that you're going to have the offers next year. I think that's what Cliff Kingsbury found from 12 months ago. But Yeah, it all seems to be trending in the right direction. I think that is it is great news. Before we get to the super chats, Jeff, I want to ask you about the Super Bowl, the fact that it is the Patriots, and I was really happy about that because I think it's 11 years, and if you can't move on from a sporting event after 11 years, well, it doesn't say much for you as a person. But for me, I don't know how about you. I really struggled when the Seahawks lost that Super Bowl. Like I'm not someone like, luckily, and this is not a lot of people do. I've not been someone who suffered with my mental health, really, Jeff. I've been able to sort of fight through the difficulties and stuff like that. But I was in a real sort of, I'd say, form of depression after that loss, because it felt as if this great team that we'd went on this amazing adventure with had just completely collapsed in front of our own eyes on one play, that you just knew nothing was ever going to be the same again. That instead of having a dynasty that would be remembered forever, what would be remembered forever was an interception on the 1 yard line. And that now, when I wrote about this before the last game, whenever I watch the highlights of the Super Bowl they won, I'm always kind of thinking about, well, yeah, but what happened 12 months later when I'm watching that? And that's just avoidable. I know some people will think that's deliberately negative. It's not. I don't want to feel that way, but I feel like the two Super Bowls are almost connected, that you can't separate them both. Like they're there together, and the what could have been will always be there forever. It took a number of years, Jeff. I was an emotional wreck watching the Minnesota Vikings playoff game 12 months later, because I felt like they had to win the next Super Bowl to move on. That was the only way they could recapture it. And when the Blair Walsh missed that kick, I was a mess. But then a week later, they got battered by the Panthers. And then as the years went by, you just thought they're never going to get this back, to the point where the team changed, everything moved on. They came pretty middling as a franchise. And that's when I kind of got over it. But now that they're playing the Patriots again in the Super Bowl, it just feels like it's such a great opportunity for closure, like once and for all. Like, if they win this game, every time they play that bloody interception, do you know what? I'm going to think, yeah, but we beat them 11 years later. Like, and I just think that's going to be great. I feel like it'd be good for everybody if we could have that. For everyone who follows this franchise to have that. So I'm delighted it's the Patriots. I say bring on that highlight being replayed 1 million times over the next 2 weeks, having a week of Radio Row interviews talking about that play, having all of the players who weren't involved in that Super Bowl being asked about it, just so that when that game kicks off, if they can win this thing, we'll finally have that bit of closure.
Yeah, I've had very similar reactions to you. I was in a bit of denial. I remember people were writing the moment that Super Bowl ended. They're like, the Seahawks team's never going to be the same. And I was like, what are you talking about? This roster is incredible. They have all these young guys. Their quarterback's in the third year. Like, they're just going to get better. And then they got Jimmy Graham, and it was like, okay, like, this team's going to be good for so long. And then as you start to hear the stories come out years later, and you start to see the team kind of fall apart, and the offensive line and the identity of the team fall apart, that really was the crack. And that Super Bowl did hit me in ways that obviously nothing else is. I've had different kinds of sports pain, but that one was different because it felt like we lost it for ourselves in the most frustrating manner possible. And I would just, at random times, I'd be taking a shower or I'd be out with my friends, and that play would just hit me again. I'd get weird thoughts like, why didn't they just do play action? Why didn't they just get Russell on the move? And I would just, why didn't they have Chris Matthews on the field to take Brandon Browner away? And just like little moments of that thing would just bother me. And I'd think about it at the strangest time. Every year during the Super Bowl, I would think about it. And just little moments like that, like if they just took Chris Matthews, put him on the left side, Browner wouldn't have been there, and the damn play might have worked. Why did you run that play to Ricardo Lockett? Like things like that. What happens if you just put out 7 O-linemen and ran the ball? And I would just think of different, and I've never quite been able to get out. Every time I see it, I start getting into this wormhole of little things about that play that bother me. And I remember even in the moment, I was just like, if they score here, how are they going to stop Brady again with 26 seconds? Because I remember what happened a couple of years ago with Matt Ryan. I was just like, is this going to happen again with Harold Simon and those little guys running? But if they lost in that way, it would have been more understandable. But yeah, it's really poetic that it's the Patriots. And I think if you look at the matchup, and I've watched every Patriots playoff game really closely, this is a good matchup for the Seahawks. For what they do really well defensively, they have struggled with really good offensive lines. The Patriots give up more pressure than any offensive line in the league. So it's a good game for their D-line. Their corners have good matchups against these receivers. Their lack of skill has shown up in the playoffs. But I will say the Patriots are very well coached. They're tough. Their defense is playing out of their mind since they got Milton Williams and Christian Barmore back. It's not going to be the run-over game I think people think. So I think it's going to be a tough game. Mike Vrabel is maybe the best coach at situational football. And I think McDonald will have a really good plan of how to attack. Drake May is not playing well. Their issues have been exposed a little bit, but man, yeah, this would be, and it's going to be a weird week. Like if I'm Russell, I probably wouldn't go down to the Radio Row this week. You know what everyone's, and it must be a little weird for him, like watching like all your old teammates are like with the Seahawks now. It's like Bruce was there yesterday, and Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill are raising the flag with Jody Allen, and Doug Baldwin did the flag last week, and Sherman's there, Malcolm Smith's there, and like Russ is tweeting about them, but like, you know, he's not part of that little group. And like even Bobby Wagner must be a little weird. Like all his guys are there and he probably can't go because he's an active player. And so, yeah, that highlight, they have the chance to unwrite that with a totally different script. And this is not the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick Patriots. The Seahawks have big advantages here, and it's going to be fun to beat them if they do. This is like playing against Jared Stidham would feel like the Denver defense is great. Sean Payton's a great coach. But that would have felt like a bit of like a fake Super Bowl. Jared Stidham. Yeah. This would feel special.
I wanted to bring this. I've brought the draft order up, not for any draft-related reason, but to show strength of schedule, Jeff, because I wonder if I find this interesting. So you can see the. I'll zoom in a little bit here. So you can see the strength of schedule column is there, and you can see like so the teams generally a 0.5 or a 0.4 in the strength of schedule. And then you go down and you go down and you go down until the very end where you see the two Super Bowl teams that are left. New England are the only team, Jeff, who were sub 0.4. They were the only team in the entire NFL who had a strength of schedule of sub 4, which is incredible. Like it's an unbelievably easy schedule for the Patriots this year. Now, I don't know if that means anything because, you know, they've played two playoff games, or three playoff games now since, and they handled the Chargers quite easily. The Texans just couldn't stop turning the ball over, and then they won in the snow in what was a fairly preposterous game yesterday. And well, it was an awful watch. It was an awful game to watch. What can we actually make of the Patriots, though? Because on the one hand, like they're undefeated on the road, and Drake May's had a great season, but you know this is still a team that many people were expecting was going to be major rebuild potential. Like they were classic sort of like if they won 8 or 9 games, that'd be pretty good. And yet here they are in the Super Bowl, and yet I don't know if they've really been tested so far. I mean, like the Seahawks might not have played particularly well on defense against the Rams in the last 2 games, but they did win both games.
That have been tested. So I've watched every New England playoff game, and I had Drake May on my fantasy team this year. So I probably watched more New England Patriots football than I normally would have. So it's been a weird season for them because during the regular season, it was really Drake May carrying them against inferior competition, and he was playing out of his mind. And their defense was pretty soft, and they had some injuries. Now the defense got healthy. Christian Gonzalez is back. He's playing really, really well. Milton Williams, the free agent from Philly, who they really missed, is playing really well. And Christian Barmore is back and healthy, and they have some other guys who they spend money on. A bunch of little pieces that are playing. Their defense has played fantastic. Like if you watch Denver try to run the ball, and Denver is one of the best offensive lines in the league, they couldn't get anywhere in the run game yesterday. And the conditions didn't help, but even when it was fine. But offensively, it's been strange because Drake May has not played well at all in the playoffs. He had some cool moments yesterday with his legs, but all 3 games, they've played they've had a very light playoff schedule. They played the Chargers missing their 2 tackles. and that was a struggle. It was a pretty hard watch too. Then they played the Houston offense, which isn't great to begin with, and without Nico Collins. So that's not a particularly good team, and CJ Stroud was a hot mess that game. And then yesterday it was the Broncos without their quarterback, and they basically needed a snowstorm to beat them. And so when you watch that game yesterday, even before the snowstorm, that looked like a wild card game, just like the quality of the game. It just looked like two wild card teams that had no business. You usually watch the AFC Finals, and it's the Chiefs with Mahomes and Josh Allen. Over the years, we've seen Brady and the Patriots and so many interests. The Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger. You've seen so many of these great teams come out. And New England, they're well coached. I think Mike Vrabel is a very good coach. I was very high on him the year that he was in the head coaching search. They're very good situationally. They don't make a lot of silly mistakes. They're really good with the clock. But it's really the defense that's driving them in the playoffs. Because if you look at Drake May's numbers, they've been bad. And he hasn't played very well. I think he's averaging 191 yards a game. I think he's turned the ball over. And the thing is, since Will Campbell got back from injury, he's been giving up pressure on the left side of their offensive line at a crazy rate. And their offensive line is not good. And that's the thing. They have not played a lot of big pass rushes. Denver really had field. I think they got 8 pressures on the first 12 snaps or something yesterday. And so they played Houston, and Houston gave them some trouble. They're a great defense. I think Seattle, if they can get a little creative with how they guard them, I think New England's going to have a lot of trouble coming up with that. If you can stop the run against them and you make them a drop-back team, I just don't think – and we saw with the opposite of what an elite offense can do to this team. I think Seattle's going to struggle a bit on offense. This is a really good defense. It's going to be hard to run on them. But the Seahawks had the chance to just absolutely shut them down like they did to San Francisco on defense. Because this D-line against an offensive line like that, I think they could take over the game.
It's a great chance, isn't it? Before we get to the super chats to finish, Jeff, I do want to I pointed this out in the stream yesterday. Like my prediction for the Rams game. The fellas gave me a lot of grief for this because they said, "How on earth have you kind of come to this maths?" But I predicted 32-27. I'm really annoyed that they couldn't find one more point in this game, so that I would have got that absolutely perfectly spot on. So there we go. The other thing I was going to say is, I don't know if everybody's seen Jeff on Brian's show on a Saturday, but I want to take the opportunity, Jeff, to say how much I'm enjoying the Twitter police segment that you have for Brian every week. It's very much up my street, that kind of content. So I'm very much enjoying that. So
I don't know why I get so annoyed. I don't know why I get so annoyed by like stupidity, but
you seem to be finding some excellent examples of it every
week. That's what I mean. It's not hard these days. Like, go look at David Lombardi's feed yesterday saying, well, the 49ers won in week 1, so they're ultimately better than the Rams. It was like, what? They lost 41-6 last week. What?
I could not have the energy, Jeff, to keep up with the bits that he's doing as like this like fanboy journalist. Honestly, the mask would slip for me at some point. Like I'd just end up tweeting something negative because I just couldn't keep up the pretend.
Yeah, we should have some skepticism or something.
It's
like he's a political propaganda writer at this point.
Yeah. But the thing is like, so to pull back the curtain of the industry a little bit here, Jeff, like you do have some journalists who are like this, who, you know, the kind of toady types who suck up to the teams and all of this. They typically do it because they get information, like they get sourced info. They break stories. They're like, I'll sort of toady up to you and you give me like this free agent that you're going to sign or a contract. David Lombardi doesn't break any news. He just does the toadying for the joy of being a toady. Like it doesn't make any sense.
And even the 49ers fans get mad at him. So but look, there was writers last week who, like, I saw one LA writer last week who wrote, well, now that they beat the Bears in the cold, they're automatically going to the Super Bowl. I'm like, what are the Seahawks, just pylons or something? Like, they just beat them and they're the number 1 seed. What are you talking about? And so, I don't know. Last week, I found, like, with such a big game, I found the content across America was so weak. And, like, Dan Orlovsky went on TV the other day and was like, I'm only picking Matt Stafford because he's my friend. And I'm like, people are dying to get in these jobs. Orlovsky probably makes $1 million a year. And that's the analysis we get from that money, that you're picking him because he's your friend. I'd rather be unloyal than wrong. was like,
Jeff, it was a crap week of podcasting and streaming and analysis. Like I really like Connor Orr, and when he gets together with Albert Breer, I really like their conversations. But Connor Orr spent most of last week talking about Sam Darnold's oblique, and I thought there's so many like things to say about this. It was always, well, if he gets hit once, what happens to the oblique? And I was like, my word, can we just move on from this? And then you sort of sat there on Sunday afternoon, or I was, and Adam Schefter starts tweeting about the oblique again. I'm thinking, oh God, like there's just so many things you could talk about here. Like, why are we spending so much time? I mean, Darnold then goes and has the performance of his life so far, and you think, why did you waste so much time on that? But anyway, we'll see what the analysis is like over the next couple of weeks. Let's hope they've been saved.
I will say, I rip on a lot of bad analysis. Luke Wilson, if you guys remember him from the Seahawks,
yes,
he is a NFL analyst on the local channel in Canada called TSN. So I see a lot of Luke Wilson now on TV in my country. And Luke Wilson was being asked after the Seahawks game, and all of a sudden he went on this rant against Adam Schefter from the week before about how stupid it was that he put that tweet out saying he hasn't thrown since Thursday. And Luke's like, I've had an oblique injury before. Why would a quarterback throw from a Thursday injury for a Saturday? He's like, no quarterback in the world would do that. It was embarrassing they put that out. And Luke DM'd me after being like, I thought he was going to get mad at me for like putting him against Schefter. He's like, thanks for saying that. And so nice. Schefter's been being a little pot stirrer to get drama going, but like hearing Luke just tear into that tweet being like, that made no sense. Why would a quarterback throw the ball when it's going to hurt those muscles in a Saturday game? It makes no sense. And I was the one losing my mind. Like, are we actually going to see Drew Lock in a playoff game? And yeah, shame on Schefter, man. That was shit.
Let's get through the super chats to finish off, Jeff. This from Take 610. What a season to win it all. It's the 50th anniversary of the Seahawks football. It's Super Bowl 60, and best of all, where we'll win on the 49ers home turf and get revenge on the Patriots at the same time. Have to say, Jeff, there is nowhere I'd rather be playing the Super Bowl than apart from maybe Seattle, than Santa Clara. Like, there's just the housery that is going on there of having to go to the Niners backyard and play the Super Bowl. Having beaten the Niners and the Rams to get there is absolutely fantastic. The only thing I'd say, Jeff, is I really hope that Jason Myers has a really good warm-up before the Super Bowl and get some practice in, because he missed a couple of kicks the last time he was there, didn't he?
He was so bad in that game. I forgot about that. Oh, he missed that short field goal.
Yes, I mean that could have been a really handsome looking sort of, at the very least, 19-3. Instead, it was 13-3. We had to have a week of, well, the Seahawks only scored. They held them to 13 points. Was the refrain from the Niners journalists?
That game should have 31-3.
Held them to 13. Yeah, okay.
Really worked well in the next game.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly did. Do you know what? As much as we're stressed about playing the Niners in that game, I'm so bloody pleased they did, because just absolutely smashed them to pieces in that second game. That's one of my favorite games. This from Gianth just says C. So obviously Jeff is now going to say
Hawks.
There you go. Brett says this offseason Spoon could stand to add some weight to his frame to match physicality. Him slipping all over the field was so frustrating. I think, Jeff, I'm not gonna sort of make excuses here. Increasing with cornerbacks, and it's why I'm kind of cautious about drafting them early. I always feel like the position is damage limitation. That there's always a chance as a cornerback you could get embarrassed. Someone's going to run a good route on you. You might trip up. You might get blocked off by Puka Nacua, who was just acting as a sixth offensive lineman. Like, there's always something that could happen that means you are just marginally out of position to make a play. And even half a yard separation in the NFL is dangerous when you have got quarterbacks like Matt Stafford there. Quarterbacks are going to have bad games. Cornerbacks are going to have bad games, Jeff. And Spoon had a few issues there, but I wouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel with him. I wouldn't be saying he needs to get in a big weight program and eat a few steaks in the off season.
Yeah, I think that's an overcorrection to what happened yesterday, and I think his speed is really good. I think his tackling is really. I think his frame. There was definitely some concerns about his frame, and the injuries he's had has not been because of his size and his frame. I think yesterday, I don't know if the field was slippery or what, but I think when you cover Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, who gets the best releases historically of maybe any player in the NFL, he had a rough game against those guys. And so, look, he hasn't had those issues. When San Francisco, looked like those corners looked like the best unit in the league. And that was the thing I was so excited about, saying, like, now that our D-line and corners have come together, we should be pretty dominant on defense. And those guys had tough games. You got to give credit to credit's due. I think a lot of that has to do with the physicality of Puka, the way he runs routes. And I think Devontae Adams' releases, you saw what he did to Job early in the game. You saw what he did to Spoon. I thought Devontae was great again yesterday. And I hadn't seen him play at that level in the other playoff games. He looked slow, and it was a little alarming seeing just those releases they were getting yesterday. But I don't think it has to do with Witherspoon's size. I just think it's a challenge to cover those two guys at the best of times.
Before we finish off the Super Chat, Chef, I'm really interested to see what Matthew Stafford, what happens with him now. Because he's 38.
Yeah.
And this was easily his best season in a long time. Like, he didn't play this way in the regular season at all last year. And you just wonder whether or not he sort of really went for it this year, if he's done anything differently. Has he got the motivation to do that again next year? As you get a year older, as someone who is 41 now, like, you do start to feel it more and more and more at this age when you get to that kind of time. And you just wonder, like, is he going to be able to play at this level again? I wouldn't rule it out given the way that he's played, but it can happen quite quickly, can't it, Jeff? Like, Drew Brees went from this guy could play forever to all of a sudden, Drew Brees isn't looking like Drew Brees anymore. Russell Wilson was an even more dramatic.
That happened at hyperspeed, yeah.
Now, I think Stafford's probably just the way that he plays is better prepared to carry on. But you just don't know, do you? And I think that when the Rams, we thought this way when Aaron Donald retired, the Rams would have problems, and they've carried on being a good team. When Stafford moves on, Jeff, they're going to have to find an answer there.
Yep, and they were probably hoping this was going to be the draft, but I don't know. I don't think picking 13 or 14 or those two, even combining those two picks, I don't really know where that gets you. I don't think there's a veteran. I don't think they're getting Joe Burrow for those picks. And
how smart were they? They're so smart, the Rams. They've got 2 picks in this loaded quarterback draft, and it's an amazing move. Like, he's done it. Les Snead's done it again. And like, here they are. There's not even a quarterback that they draft with. If they pick second overall, Jeff, you wouldn't take a quarterback.
No, and all of a sudden, James Pierce and Xavier Watts were all rookie team members, both top 5 for Rookie of the Year in the AP voting. I think there's a case they might have lost the trade. I don't know if James Pierce, a better player at pick 12 or 13, will be better than James Pierce in this draft.
He was another one who had massive character flags. Like, everybody at Tennessee didn't.
Yeah, there was a reason he slipped.
He was like a loner at Tennessee, but massively talented, and fair play to the Falcons that got something.
No, but to answer your question, look, I'm done trying to predict Matt Stafford's downfall, because last year in the second half of the year, he looked like he was trajectory going the wrong way, and like even they had to win that Arizona game late in the year, and he was throwing balls that should have been intercepted. And then he has those back injuries, and I'm like, all right, this might be the start of this. And the Rams came this close to trading him. I think if the Giants or the Raiders gave a first-round pick, he was gone. They let him explore with those teams. Tom Brady met him at that cottage. I think they offered second-round picks, and they were this close. And the reporting from Albert Breer was that they were prepared to move forward with Jimmy Garoppolo or Aaron Rodgers. And no, those guys are pretty old too. So maybe that's that they could have drafted Jackson Dart with the pick they traded away, and I don't know how good he'd be in this system. But yeah, I thought when he had those back injuries, I'm like, all right, this is why they wanted to get out of that. And then he proceeds to have the best year of his career. And even when he was starting to play a little poorly in those playoff games, he comes out yesterday and he looked unstoppable. He looked like the Terminator. And so it's going to be really hard. I haven't read it yet, but there was an Athletic story about like the reaction of the locker room. And I saw just the headline, like Stafford was fuming privately. And the fact that they wasted that performance, I imagine can't sit well with them, but it's going to be really hard for him to get the motivation to do this all again. And so
it's crazy that like in his first year in LA, Jeff, he like 41 touchdowns, nearly 5,000 yards. And then for the next few seasons, so in 2022, he only played 9 games, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks. 2023, 24 touchdowns, 11 picks. Last season, 20 touchdowns, 8 picks. and all of a sudden has skyrocketed to 46 touchdowns and 8 interceptions this year. That's incredible. It's such a remarkable season for him. Like, can he do it again? Is this an outlier? Has he got it in him to do another season like that where he plays every game as well? It's going to be interesting to see. It really is. Hawks fan Mattman says, got to give some love to Executive of the Year John Schneider for this roster and coaching staff. Absolutely true. There was never any better example really this season that he fully deserved that than yesterday. Sam says, feels like the first time in years we made a thoughtful focus on the O-line with the draft and coaches. Is it a coincidence? It's not a coincidence, is it, Jeff? No. If they'd done it a bit earlier, we might. But I'm kind of content with the fact that we got a good few years of debate out of that. Then
we did, and I think the Gray Zabel pick really just set up. Like, even if they sign Will Fries in free agency, who knows if they draft Gray Zabel? They might have just drafted Eamon Warry there, and then they might have been just in the same spot they've always been. And who would have been the left? Christian Haynes, the left guard. Like, I think the brilliant part of this whole thing was that Kubiak had a collection of coaches, and which is why me and you were so nervous about losing him, that were developed. And John said it after the year, to be fair. He said this isn't fully a development problem. It's a coaching problem, but they have not put enough. And this year they have Rick Dennison, John Benton, Justin Ouden, who's taken over the running back coach. And since he's taken over for Kenny Polamalu, the running game has become good. I think that's an underrated story of the season. I believe Kenny Polamalu was fired because the running backs were not working. And that development combined with the pick of Gray Zabel, and from my understanding, Steve Hutchinson was like begging John to draft Gray Zabel. And he's made some bad evaluations in the past, so it's not that. Christian Haynes was their freaking pick.
I was going to say, yes, Christian
He was a healthy scratch yesterday. So
imagine if he was good, Jeff.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a good second guard, because Anthony Bradford has his moments, but then he just always finds a way to make it the most painful penalty possible. But yeah, you just see the way Jalen Sundell's played, the way they were willing to pay Charles Cross. This is a focus of this program. The trenches, toughness. I think they're going to keep spending high capital on this position, and it's such a pleasure after the last 10 years. Oh my God. We haven't talked about the offensive line other than what they do at right guard this year. It's such a pleasure.
It really is. The Warhammer guy says, if we win one more, it's the most magical run in Seattle sports history. The wins against over 500 teams, playoff rivals, and Super Bowl revenge in Santa Clara. I am not a historian of Seattle sports history, but
yeah, this is probably the wrong podcast for this.
Yeah,
Toronto
and from Rotherham, but it will be fun, regardless of whether it is exactly that or not. It will be unbelievable. Thank you for your super chat. Baylor B says, is Sam Darnold the quarterback for the next 7 years? That was Mahomes and Allen. I'm shocked. I mean, I don't feel the need. 7's quite a random number to pick out. Like, why 7 instead of 6 or 8 or 5 or 10? I don't feel like we need to sort of talk about long term, Jeff. Like, in the here and now, the Seahawks have got a quarterback who's getting the job done. Like, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. If Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl, I think that's great. And if he loses the Super Bowl, he still had a great season. You come back next year and you see how next season goes. Because if he's crap next year, you have to have a different conversation. And these things can change very, very quickly. But right now, it's not a question mark. He's playing well enough to be the quarterback of this team. He's not the unquestioned, unchallenged 10, 15-year starter, but neither is he someone who needs to be replaced in the offseason, Jeff. I think you just play it year to year, and this year, he's done a great job for what was required. Yeah,
like when he was struggling during the first little bit of the second Rams game after the first, I was definitely wondering in my head, like, do they need to find a new quarterback next year? And then he comes out and wins that game, and he's had some really good moments since then. The fact that, but look, like, we had Matt Hasselbeck all these years. He wasn't at like the Manning, Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers level. He was a little tier below that. And I think that's kind of where Darnold is. And you can get by with that kind of quarterback. He's a low maintenance guy. He's beloved in the room. He's at an amazing salary. Like, yeah, we don't need to start thinking 7 years out. Just see how he's going to be back next year. Obviously, he's earned his way back. Probably earned his way back for the year after that. And you go from there. There's no reason. We don't need to think about this right now. Like, he's one game away from winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
I get a little nervous that everyone's like looking past New England and they're like, well, this is going to be the greatest moment. We still got another game to play, guys. And Mike Vrabel and that defense is no joke. So let's
Vrabel's a hell of a coach.
Yeah. The fact that they're in the Super Bowl with that roster in the first year, I think it's very telling.
And he's you know who he played for. And the guy he played for would turn up at these games and have a plan and would keep you guessing and would be very good at game planning. So you've got to be remembered of that. Like the coach that he played for, predominantly in his career, has won more Super Bowls than anybody else. And Taylor Clark with the final super chat here. Thank you very much for that. So there we go. The Seahawks are in the Super Bowl. Jeff, go and enjoy and celebrate. And it's definitely going to bring a smile to my face for the next 2 weeks, knowing that this game is happening. So always a pleasure to speak to you. And hopefully we can catch up before the game and do another stream at least and look ahead a bit more to what we're going to expect between the Patriots and the Seahawks.
Exactly. I still can't believe the Super Bowl still hasn't quite hit me yet. I have to watch more content, man.
Yeah, it is surreal. Thanks, Jeff. Great to speak to you. That's Jeff Simmons there with us here on the latest stream. So if you haven't already, subscribe because now, like, I'm going to put a little plan in place. What are we going to do? We're going to do a stream every day. We're going to try and get guests on. Like, maybe you just let me know in the comment section what you'd like over the next 2 weeks because it feels like we should make the most of this situation as I now end the stream and go and see if I can somehow find a ticket for this thing or not. I'm sure you're all doing the same thing. If you would like the video, that'd be a big help, as well as subscribing. When I finish the stream, if you could go on your phone or your tablet and press the hype button, that would also be much appreciated. And check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. The Seahawks are in the Super Bowl. They'll be taking on the New England Patriots. Cannot wait for that. Until next time, bye for now.